Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
It was our contract of 60 days because of their threats to the United States of America and because they have killed our troops many times. You still may not agree with it. You still may not agree with a military strike that took out uranium-enriching targets and no people whatsoever. But that's the reason. We had a contract. They were scamming us. This weekend obviously happened. This administration launched, didn't declare war. They carried out a strategic stealth mission. Let me just sort of walk you through some important points here before we get to the pros and cons and the real news and fake news. Can we at least accept how amazing it is that, point one, American warplanes left from Missouri, took out, they flew through airspace, not just of Iran, but all the airspace between here and Iran, took out strategically these sites that were related to enriching uranium with incredible precision, all of them. As far as we know it, no civilian casualties and no human military casualties. And our planes were back over the ocean on the way home before Iran had any idea what happened. That's point one. Point two, and this is something I keep coming back to. Look, I understand why people may not like, even before this, I said I would rather Israel do it if it's their fight.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do need to separate that from our interests here. But point number two is, even if you disagree with this, even if you don't like that Donald Trump did it, a military strike that kills nobody and takes out very specific targets that have been in contention is not something that would divide the Republican Party. Certainly not impeachable. It would be something that you put in the column of, I don't really like that about him. Sort of like me with Donald Trump and bump stocks. Or that he's not nearly as pro-life as I would like to. This is not the kind of thing that would divide the party and get people to say we're starting a third party. We're leaving. We're no longer Republicans because, oh my gosh, this is George W. Trump. Also, I think that it's important, point number three. When we look back on this, it's either going to be a political misstep for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, I understand that, or a historic averting of nuclear catastrophe. It is going to be one of those things. And I do think that that was way people going like, yeah, this could be a misstep because it'll be unpopular for a bit. But if they are close, and if they're doing what we think they're doing and what they've said that they will do, we've got to avoid this country getting a nuke, because then it's an arms race across that entire region of the world and instability forevermore. And point number four, what happened to Taco Trump? I keep asking you that. What happened? That was the left's attack. Taco Trump. He's a coward. He's a coward. He doesn't do anything. He always chickens out. Okay? If nothing else, when he says, don't make me count to three, you know he means what he say. So Saturday, President Donald Trump ordered the strike that took place on Iran's nuclear facilities. Here is him laying it out in case you missed it.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
I like the way he said that.
Part. It'd be like stealing candy from a baby. A baby.
He had the strength. I don't know if that's
Its whole head is soft spot. Now, let me just explain to you exactly how, for those of you who maybe don't know exactly what took place, and then the reason why. References available. So 7 B-2 Spirit bombers flew from Missouri to Iran, about 18 hours. Another group flew west over the Pacific as a distraction. which I don't even know how necessary that was. Like, hey, what are you doing over there? Oh, shit. So
They're like, hey, did you guys see our distraction? They're like, no.
No, we just there's
What were you distracting us from?
Diversion.
Nothing.
What do you mean? Distraction from... So 14 bunker buster bombs were dropped. And that was a Fordo and we just said Natanz. And then a submarine launched Tomahawk missiles as well. Our planes were back on the way home over the ocean before Iran had any idea what happened. And here's the thing. For me, that blows my mind. Mm-hmm. All of that happening, and no one had any idea. You'd think that in Iran, there might have you'd think there'd be just one.
Yes, hello. You know how if I see something, I'm supposed to say something? Well, I think I saw something.
That's fake news. That never happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're stealth bombers. I mean, they're 35,000, 40,000 feet up.
Yeah.
They are undetectable. They probably had low visibility, low light. They probably had good cloud coverage.
Right. On paper, but I guess I just thought with an entire nation of people, 100 million people, that there would be one detectable.
Also currently under attack. It's not like they're, just like kind of lollygagging through life.
Yeah.
They're currently being bombed by another nation right now. You think they'd have like all eyes on the sky.
Yes.
What's about to happen?
It's not just like a guy with a hot dog cart in Central Park
Right.
who doesn't see it coming. They're really, really looking for it.
I mean, good on us for not letting them see.
So taking away whether you agree with it or not, that is pretty cool. Now, Defense Secretary...
It's rock and roll. It's very cool.
It is very cool. And by the way, Pete Hegseth, and I will tell you this, I do have a theory. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth definitely had a point to prove. After Signalgate, he was making sure that there were no leaks. No one knew about it. I bet you he was like, hey, you say one word, and I will kill your family.
He's just got a bunch of kids locked up.
Everyone in the department showing up. He's just eating dinner with their wives. Oh, yeah, welcome home. Anything happen at work today? Or is it a completely normal day? Knock, knock. Who's there? Shut the up. Don't say anything. I guarantee you this guy was on a mission to make sure that no one said a word. Someone was like, some words, you're out.
No words.
So him and Marco Rubio, both, and this is important. It's very important. They reiterated, they answered very clearly. This is not about regime change. This is about eliminating their nuclear capabilities, okay? They were very, very clear. Now, Donald Trump hasn't been as clear. But I understand that. It's very important to know, because if the regime is bad, the regime is irrelevant to us if they don't have nukes or nuclear capabilities. Sure, I get it. When people say, yeah, they shout death to America in Seattle. Yep, I understand. I get it. They don't have nuclear capabilities. The combination of nuclear capabilities and death to America, and we will kill Americans, and we have killed Americans, that combination is what was a problem. Remove the capabilities, and now that is a problem for the people of Iran. That no longer, in my opinion, involves Americans. If they want a regime change, they can do it. Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio were very clear in answering, and boy, they were on a tear.
Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know
No,
that.
it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's not. It doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons.
But President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening.
They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an
That's a question.
Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace.
That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Now, forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program.
Is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Now, it seems to me that the big thing that people are upset about is the timing because of Iran and Israel. Okay, so if you believe that we're doing this because of a war for Israel, I understand that. But let me give you a little bit of perspective here. The reason for this timing is because there was a clock set for 60 days. And the reason that clock was set was because Donald Trump said, all right, we need to negotiate, we need to figure this out, and you have to play ball. And by the way, this administration has said, of course they can have nuclear capabilities for nuclear energy. That to me is incredibly gracious. Historically, that probably wouldn't be allowed of a country as crazy as Iran that throws acid into women's faces and blinds them because they showed some ankle. So let me give you the reason for the 60-day timeline and why Donald Trump acted. Now, you may not agree with it, but why this timeline took place irrespective of Israel, okay? So 60-day timeline. Why? Because Iran was enriching uranium levels towards weapon grade levels, right? Fordo, where it was taking place, it was located 260 to 360 feet underground, okay? IAEA found uranium that was enriched at 83%. In Fordo. There's no reason for that. 83%. That's what they claim. All right, but let's take away the fact that they claim that. We said, look, we need to be able to inspect, we need to be able to have a conversation, we need to negotiate here, and we need to make sure you're not making a nuke. So these are our terms. United States and Iran, 60 days to make sure that this happens. Why? Also because you guys are calling for the death of America, because you guys are following this ideology of the 12th Imam. But here's the other thing. They put this stuff underground. They were not, by the way, answering our calls, put it that way. They were not negotiating in good faith. They missed the 60-day window. They refused to speak with us. They were acting cagey. They were holding these indirect talks through intermediaries like Amman, Rome. We wanted direct talks. We said, hey, you have to stop enrichment. Let us make sure that we know you are not enriching at this point and sit down and talk with us directly. And if you don't do that in the span of 60 days, there are going to be other alternatives. They didn't do it. That's why we, this administration, did something. It was our contract of 60 days because of their threats to the United States of America and because they have killed our troops many times. You still may not agree with it. You still may not agree with a military strike that took out uranium-enriching targets and no people whatsoever. But that's the reason. We had a contract. They were scamming us. We don't need to have the entire intelligence community on board, though we do have a lot of it. Mm-hmm. We just need to know that they're not honoring the contract, that we need to ensure they aren't becoming a threat, and they were scamming us and jerking us around.
Yeah.
And so our decision was keep letting them scam us and jerk us around or do something.
Yeah. And this is a regime that you said that they've done so many terrible things out there. They also have an apocalyptic worldview that you talked about. Yes. The 12th Imam and bringing about a global catastrophe to bring back their Messiah. It's like, this isn't just like some group like leave us alone and let us live our lives, right? Sure. Also, people that are really pissed off about the timing of Israel, think about what Israel did. They took out the majority of their air defenses. They had air superiority. They had control of the skies. This was the perfect time for us to fly in and not have an incident on the way in or on the way out.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we take advantage of that?
Well, a declaration of war is not targeting sites and not people. and specifically the sites that have been in contention. So where do we go from here? Look, and a lot of people out there are just presenting these options, and they're also misrepresenting facts. Option one, Iran capitulates here and negotiates. They realize they have no cards left to play. That's it. Okay, this is the hand they were dealt. All right, you guys can no longer get to the point of a nuclear bomb. Your administration, your government has failed. It's not going to be. It's not going to be allowed to stay. It's not going to work with the rest of the civilized world. You screwed up. Accept it. Start playing ball. That's option one, which, by the way, Vice President J.D. Vance made really clear. The Iranians really need to take some accountability and blame themselves for this, because there was a 60-day window which they had plenty of time and opportunities to honor, and specifically shirked their responsibilities at every given chance.
Oh, of course we trust our intelligence community, but we also trust our instincts, and most importantly, we trust what the intelligence was telling us about the Iranians stonewalling the negotiation. I think that is really the hidden story here, and something the media has got to report a little bit more here, is that the Iranians stopped negotiating in good faith. That was the real catalyst, I think, to what the president ultimately decided to do. If we were having a productive negotiation, I think that this could have gone in a much different pathway. Unfortunately, the Iranians decided to stonewall us, and we saw the consequences of that last night.
Option two. And this is, now, here's, by the way, option two doesn't necessarily mean World War III, but certainly some conflict. Iran escalates. A neutered Iran attempts to escalate, I should say. And they have said that maybe U.S. bases could be legitimate targets. They've also, or there have been allusions threatening to block shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, is like 40% of the world's tanker traffic. The problem with that is it would piss off China. And I think it's anywhere from 40 to 50% of like their oil has to go through there with China. It would harm the rest of the world more than it would harm us. They're making these threats. We don't necessarily know if they even have the ability to do that.
I mean, these are threats they've made for years anyway.
Right. Yes.
And they've acted upon too. So.
Right. They have. So either Iran decides to start playing ball, or they kind of keep doing what they're doing, only neutered. And here's the difference, too. The playing field has changed because President Trump made it pretty damn clear what would happen if Iran escalates. And I know people saying you can't drop bombs and ask for peace. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, we did it in 45.
Yeah. And then, see people, hear people say, oh, actually, the nukes had nothing to do with Japan surrendering. It was the Russians. I'm sure it had zero effect. Here's what Donald Trump said on Truth. He said, any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Thank you, Donald J. Trump, President of the badass United States.
The country who sent planes you never saw.
That you never saw. It's like, next time, maybe we'll see the planes.
No.
And do nothing. Next time, maybe we'll see them and go like, ah! And, we'll feel good about it.
If there's a next time, I feel confident we could leave the stealth technology off.
Yeah, so do I.
Let them watch us come.
Yeah, just like the Predator when he turns off his wristband. Just,
ah! This is scarier somehow.
You've been there this whole time? He also posted this on Truth on Sunday. He said, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Miga, which I eat with eggs.
I was about to say.
So, this, of course, I would say, if you take it in tandem with Pete Hegseth and with what Rubio has said, means if the people want a regime change, of course. Why doesn't that make sense? They should do it. That's not saying we're going in to carry out a regime change. Maybe we will. I would disagree with it.
Yep.
I strongly disagree with regime change. Why? Because I don't have any faith in the Islamic world. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't think that Iran could possibly ameliorate the situation to the point that they get to be a good enough country for a long enough period of time that it warrants us being involved with a regime change. The threat is gone. If they have a bad regime without nukes, hey, it's just another shithole country. Sorry, I feel bad for the Iranian people. This one's on you. You're welcome for the help. But of course you can cue the freak out on X. Here's Cernovich saying, it's interesting to see people who a week ago said no, regime change trying to shame people into following the agenda, which obviously setting the table for war. Fake Christians, no principles, no integrity. What? Even the devil can quote scripture. Judas goats.
I'm not even sure where he's getting most of his anger on that one.
I don't know. And here's the thing. I understand where someone like him lines up and thinks that this is wrong. I don't understand where people like him line up and say that folks who believe a denuclearized Iran is better for the world.
Yeah.
I understand people, just like last week I said, I would rather Israel do it. I'd rather us not go in.
Of course.
That's what I said. But I understand why people were saying, no, now is the time to take them out. I certainly don't believe that those people are un-American. I certainly don't believe that they're war hawks. I certainly don't believe it's George W. Trump. This is one that I think you can either support or not, but not claim that this is a guy who is not doing what he promised and it's not what you voted for. This is one of those things. The friendly fire occurring within the conservative community is bizarre right now. This is not one of the issues that would have resulted in that. This is not a declaration of war against the world. This is not sending American troops to die for Israel. None of that has happened. And it is amazing the efficiency with which this was carried out. I can't remember nothing in recent memory with less collateral damage and less unintended fallout from a specific mission than this. It's honestly kind of fascinating. But Carolyn Levitt did try to address some of these concerns this morning.
The president believes the Iranian people can control their own destiny. And what he said last night makes complete sense. If the Iranian regime refuses to come to a peaceful diplomatic solution, which the president is still interested in engaging in, by the way, why shouldn't the Iranian people take away the power of this incredibly violent regime that has been suppressing them for decades? And so our posture has not changed. Our military posture has not changed. These were decisive precision strikes that were successful on Saturday evening. But the president is just simply raising a good question that many people around the world are asking.
And let me just address one thing here. Let's go through this term submission, and I want to give you an analogy. Submission is the act of willingly, right, submitting, giving up authority to another party, right, submitting to that. So you can choose to do that. Iran obviously wasn't. But let's even go to, if you've ever watched mixed martial arts or a grappling sport, what is an applied submission? If someone is fighting you and someone is trying to harm you, you now lock them into a position where their only option left is to submit or have their arm broken, be choked, be killed. To apply a submission to an unwilling opponent is to remove all other options so that they have to say uncle, so that they have to tap. And that is not new. You see it in individual fights, and you see it across the globe all the time. People have applied submission holds globally to avoid war, to avoid snapping the arm, to avoid knocking them out. This is that last moment. Give or snap. To act like we don't understand that, to me, maybe some people don't. I think some people are being disingenuous.
Yeah, I think they're trying to compare this to every other Middle East conflict that we've gotten involved in, and this isn't quite the same thing. They're running far ahead and speaking as though everything is going to happen negatively to make it like everything else that we've experienced before. And I don't believe in that. Like, I don't cheerlead this kind of stuff. I'm in awe about how our military can do this kind of stuff. It's incredible that they do that. But I said it on X right after. I said, I don't like this. It's not boots on the ground. I just don't like it. I don't like that it had to happen. Right. Very clear. Like, I don't like the necessity of it.
Right.
I don't want what could possibly happen next for our country and for what that could mean for people in the region that are at bases, that are exposed right now, that are in harm's way. I don't like that. But I'm not going to run out and say, Trump is walking us into a war. He's not. He struck Soleimani.
Yeah.
We have evidence very recently of the same guy doing something very similar in striking to take out a threat and dealing with the same regime and not dragging us into a conflict.
Right.
Why don't they give him that kind of leeway instead of running down to we are right back into Iraq, which is nothing like what we're dealing with right now.
Right. Yeah, and like Josh, you and I were talking about this morning, y'all must have forgotten. Like, do you guys never want any display of military might?
Yeah. There's been what last 25 years. I mean, people have forgotten like what we can do.
Right.
How often do we use the B-2 bombers?
Right.
When's the last time you heard about them being used?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Although we might not ever know.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny that they, last week or whatever, Iran state media was like, something's going to happen tonight that you guys are going to remember for centuries.
Well,
and Trump was like, well, how about 3 nights later?
Yeah, exactly.
Not so much.
They were like, something is going to happen to you. Do you see these planes? Did you see those planes before that they were there? Will we have backups?
Yeah.
Well, no other administrations act like this either.
No.
They've all gone, up the channels and done all the what they call the appropriate things. We'll talk about it later, but they just kind of use their presidential power and. Not
to mention, everyone was bitching about Barack Obama's red lines.
Oh man,
they were crossed.
There were
didn't
no
do
red
a thing.
lines.
And then they said Taco Trump.
Yeah.
Taco Trump, when he paused some of the tariffs because opposing nations said, you know what, we're actually going to review our tariffs and talk with Donald Trump. That was Taco. That was coward. He said 60 days, and then after 60 days, sorry, you guys crossed the red line.
They got 70, bro.
Yep, yeah. They got 70.
Maybe it's not 70. I'm estimating here, but they didn't get 61 was when Israel started bombing to Iran.
Yep.
It's been plenty more than 60 days.
Yeah.
Leading up to those B-2 bombings.
And there are quite a few points to be made where people will say, oh, well, Israel forced her hand. I think that's a legitimate point to make. Or Israel knew about the 60-day time frame and thought, oh, okay, after 60 days, things are going to get wild and woolly. We don't want to take that chance. So you do have to sort of logically look through it and say, okay, which one seems most likely? At this point, we don't know the answer. Oh, you're still here? And you're still watching this on YouTube? You've probably noticed something is missing by now. I'm not here. That's because the Live Daily Show is now streaming exclusively on Rumble weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tune in there, where nothing is censored.